25-30, 35-40, 45-50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going running all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious. Yep. How about that?
Oh my gracious, how about that? Is right, Garrett, as we sit here fresh off the heels of the Georgia-Alabama game. What a game that was. A game that looked like it was going to be a blaffer in the first half. Ends up being a 41-34 Alabama win where they hang on for dear life, seal it with an interception under a minute to go. I think there might have been some records across the country broken today. Not just on the field, but maybe in the amount of ibuprofen that was bought in places like College Station, Tuscaloosa. I think they might have bought a little harder stuff in Oxford, Mississippi today.
And Manhattan, Kansas. But
Manhattan, Kansas for one team at least was needing some ibuprofen after that game. But
the one guy specifically.
Yeah. Man, what a day. What a week 5 to react to. Hi, everybody. Welcome in. It's Trey Reeves. It's Garrett Turney. It's the 3 Tech live show for week 5, brought to you by Home Field Apparel, the good brand. Make sure that you're using the code 3TechPod for 10% off, 15% off your order. Well, let's not bury the lead too much, Garrett. We'll start in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where the Georgia Bulldogs fell behind 28-0 before we could even blink. They had no clue how to stop the Alabama offense. It was just Jalen Milroe left, running back right around the end, and nothing they could do to stop that Alabama offense in the first half. And they had no answers on their offensive side of the ball as well. Then everything changed after halftime. Alabama got a little bit too conservative. Georgia took advantage, made some big stops, marched down the field a couple times, and they were right there with a chance to win the game. But Ryan Williams gets the big touchdown reception to put them ahead, and then they get the interception with under a minute to go. What a game. Yeah, I'll just throw it to you. I had to scrap all my notes from this game. I have very little. I just thought it'd be fun to react to an awesome college football game. I'll just throw it over to you, Garrett.
Yeah, man. I mean, what a game is the way to lead that off. Obviously, 2 great teams. We expected a really good game coming into this, and man, what a disastrous start for the Georgia Bulldogs. Had us tweeting about, having a running clock in the second half because we thought it would be no point. There's no way Georgia comes back from this. First off, you got to go hats off to Alabama, right? Alabama plays a fantastic game. Jalen Milroe, really, really solid throughout this game, has 374 yards through the air, 117 on the ground, accounted for 4 total touchdowns. So just a fantastic job from him. And you got to also look at the kid, Ryan Williams, 6 catches, 177 yards, the 75-yarder obviously being the highlight of that whole thing. But man, like looking at both of these teams, I was really, really impressed with Georgia and their ability to come back on this. I didn't think that Georgia was going to have it in them, but to be on the road, you don't have your home field advantage, you don't have your home crowd, and to just keep grinding, keep pushing, keep doing everything you can to try to get back into this game. Got to give Carson Beck some credit. Did not start this game very well. Had a very, very bad start to this game. Ends the day with 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but 439 yards passing. Kept the team moving, kept the ball moving down the field. In a night where they really couldn't run the football, which is maybe where we need to start with Georgia, is they probably won't have the season they want to have if they cannot establish a little bit more of a run game. Trevor Etienne goes 12 carries for 55 yards. And after that, you didn't have a 10-yard rusher. And so this is a place where Georgia probably has to address a little bit better of a run game, and you might have been able to win this ball game. There might have been some moments or some opportunities there for you to not let this game get as out of hand if you're able to do that. But once again, we're not going to just sit there and say that Alabama was the worst team or that they didn't deserve it or Georgia just blew it. Alabama played their tails off. Alabama came out there, smacked him in the face to start. Georgia had no idea what was happening to them. And they look up and it's 28-0. And no matter how good of a team you are, coming back from 28 points down is really hard to do. The fact that they took a lead is almost miraculous. But yeah, when you're looking to, cover up a 28-point lead, you don't need to score that many points down the stretch. And Alabama didn't need that much good play down the stretch to end up pulling off this victory, and they did.
They needed one big play, right? They needed one more big play, and they got it from Ryan Williams, like I mentioned. That long touchdown reception where he hit a couple of spin moves. It was 75 yards. That's right. It was the first play right after Carson Beck hit a 67-yard pass to take the 1-point lead. And then Jalen Milroe hits Ryan Williams for 75 yards. He hits a couple spin moves on his way to the end zone. Just an insane effort from – but he's 17 years old. I don't know if you guys were aware, but
which is an absurd stat. It's getting a little overplayed. I
absolutely.
He was 17, and this other guy, he was in 3rd grade when he was there, and I get it. That's fun. It's fun, but at the same time, come on.
You mentioned the start of this game, and I think that's the story. I know the comeback is massive. The comeback is really fun. And they almost pulled it off, which is just absolutely incredible. But the start of this game really set Georgia back, and that's putting it lightly. When they were on defense, Alabama wasn't changing much up from drive to drive. They were trying to hit the outside, and they were just beating Georgia to the corner, turning upfield and running for a bunch of yards. And then when Milroe was wanting to pass it, Kirby Smart mentioned they're doing a lot of empty looks for the pass concept, something that Alabama hadn't shown a bunch of this year, but just nothing that Georgia could do on the defensive side of the ball was stopping anything Alabama wanted to do. And then on the flip side, I thought it was really interesting that from the word go, Georgia wanted to push the ball downfield. It was almost like Kirby Smart and Carson Beck and Bobo, the offensive coordinator, had some vendetta on people that were questioning Carson Beck's ability to pass, and they wanted to come out and say, we'll show you. We'll do it against Alabama. They're pushing it down the field immediately. They almost hit a couple of big plays early that could have changed the course of this early going in this game, but they couldn't connect on some big passes. They couldn't get the run established, and they were just behind the 8 ball. And no matter how talented you are, even if you're Georgia, going down 28-0 is not a recipe for success, especially on the road. But man, Alabama, you got to be impressed with getting the big win at home. I know a lot of people expected them to win this game. They delivered in front of the home crowd. They showed Kalen DeBoer, completely showing that his program is not going to take a step back. It did give me a little bit of shades of the Sugar Bowl last year, where he was up big against Texas late, and Texas had a shot to tie or take the lead late in the game. But Kalen DeBoer, 30-3 now as a power conference head coach. That man is going to do big things at Alabama. The program is not going to take a step back. And I think for Georgia fans, you can walk away much more confident, much more holding your head high and looking forward to the rest of the season than you were at halftime, because, man, you had to be dreading what the rest of the season looked like at halftime, dreading a trip to Austin, dreading a trip to Oxford, and maybe even thinking you might not make the college football playoff at halftime. And now you got to see what your team can be in the second half. So I think both teams can walk away pretty happy with how this second half played out. Obviously, Alabama's happy to get the win, right, but Georgia can carry some good lessons going forward and hopefully tweak some things that they see in Carson Beck. I doubt we see Carson Beck turn the ball over 4 times in a game here on out.
That would be surprising. And honestly, I think a lot of that came down to just the spiral, right? It's hard to be in Tuscaloosa and start to go down and then feel like you have to force it. And also, if their game plan was to push the ball down the field, and that's what you want to commit to in your first couple drives, they were trading, trying to force it with Alabama just coming down and scoring touchdowns and getting that crowd into it. So that's not necessarily a recipe for success, is, running an offense where you're having to push it down the field, chance some stuff, maybe throw a pick, and then, watch it turn around and Bama scores again. That's not the recipe for success for anybody. And so it just kind of seemed like Bama came into this game with a little bit of a better game plan. It seems like they were more prepared for what they thought Georgia was going to do versus Georgia knowing what Bama was going to do. That might be part of it just being DeBoer, and maybe DeBoer had a better idea of what Georgia was doing because they have an established program versus what was Kalen DeBoer able to do at Alabama. Maybe, Kirby Smart's having to guess a little bit at that. Don't know if that's what it is. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. You have to be ready. You have to get your guys ready to play. And so I kind of land on this kind of in the same place as you are. Both teams should feel really good about where they are going forward. For a little while there, I was ready to come on the podcast tonight and ask ourselves, are there more than two good teams in the SEC this year? Is it Bama and Texas, and that's just where we're going?
And Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, Tennessee too as well. Yeah,
they're just off this week, so we forget.
Yeah, they were just off this week. We didn't get to watch them, murder a team by 70 before the half or something like that. So, but I was ready to come in here and say, well, after what Georgia just did against Kentucky and watching Kentucky beat Ole Miss and watching this whole thing, is anybody actually good if Georgia's going to go in there against Bama and get smoked in their house? I was ready to come on there and talk about that, and I don't think that's the conversation we have to have anymore. Georgia can go, okay, well, we clearly weren't ready for whatever the buzzsaw of the first quarter was. So let's throw that first quarter out and say that if it weren't for the 21 points they scored in the first quarter, we won the rest of that game handily. Let's find a way to never let that happen ever again. And let's try to find a way to go through the rest of the season not getting in a 28-point hole at some point, because it's not a recipe for success, especially, like you said, with two big road games coming up, against Texas and Ole Miss.
I have a feeling we'll be seeing Georgia and Alabama face off again this year. Garrett, we can kind of end the discussion on this game on this. I'm sure we'll have some more thoughts on Monday's show. But did Alabama do enough to jump up to number 1 in the rankings in your mind with this win? At halftime, I was there, but I'm wondering how voters will – maybe they submitted their ballot and went to bed at halftime. But I'm wondering if they did enough to jump all the way up to number 1 by beating Georgia.
In my mind, the answer is yes. I thought that the winner of this game was going to be anyways. Now, the practicality of whether the AP actually puts them there is a different conversation. But going into this game, I thought that whoever won this game deserved to be number 1 based on what the AP has shown us so far this year. They were showing us that Texas jumped to number 1 because they smoked UTSA. That was the decision for them, was they smoked UTSA at the number 1. And look, Texas has looked really, really good on the field, not exactly playing anybody. And so that's obviously not to their, downfall. I'm not trying to say that Texas hasn't looked good when they played these lower teams, but Alabama just looked really good against a team that all of us consider probably a top 2, top 3 team in the country. And almost, I would argue that maybe the fact that Georgia came back helps your case, because Georgia showed that they were the team we thought they were, and Bama still found a way to beat them. And so I think that this just goes to show the point, like, this was a high-scoring game. This is a very back-and-forth contest. This is a very good Georgia team, and Alabama beat them. In my mind, they have to be number 1 right now because they have the best win in college football this season.
I think they'll be number 2. I don't disagree with anything that you said, that was probably the best win in college football this year. But I think they'll be number 2. I think they'll keep Texas number 1.
They probably will. I just think that they should move them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Yeah. I'd have a hard time filling out my ballot if I was an AP poll voter.
It's not an easy decision.
If they won by 20 and or 25 or 28, like they were up at one point, then I think they'd be the almost unanimous number 1 team in the country on Monday morning. But we'll see what happens. The polls mean nothing right now. We're still over a month away from the first college football playoff rankings. Garrett, let's move on to the other seismic result we got in the SEC today. That occurred in Oxford, Mississippi, as Kentucky upsets number 6 Ole Miss in Oxford 20-17. Garrett, this was a game dominated by, I thought, Kentucky's defense and ability to stay on the field. Ole Miss drove the field, put up a touchdown on the first drive, and this is what they did the rest of the first half. 31 yards, 3 first downs, and a 6-12 time of possession. That was the rest of the first half after their opening drive touchdown. Lane Kiffin now falls to 2-7, I believe, when his teams score less than 10 points in the first half as a head coach at Ole Miss. So for Kentucky, it was a really simple formula. They just hung around, played solid defense, didn't get the big plays, didn't give up the big plays, and they just stayed on the field when they were on offense. They doubled time of possession, held the ball for almost 40 minutes. And Mark Stoops, man, this dude was crucified for being conservative. A couple weeks ago against Georgia, not going for it on 4th down, playing the field position game, having a really cowardly punt at the end of that game, if I recall correctly. It's 4th and 7 deep in his own territory, and the man sends out the offense, and not only that, they chuck it deep down the field. Brock Vandagriff hits a receiver deep down the field and gets a 63-yard gain that set up the go-ahead touchdown. What does this mean in the grand scheme of things? I think we're underestimating Kentucky just a little bit. They've now played Georgia within a point and gone on the road to beat Ole Miss, but I don't think Ole Miss has business losing to a team like Kentucky at home as a 17-point favorite. And this kind of just brings back the same old narratives about Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I think the problem with trying to judge Kentucky right now is we haven't seen a whole lot of consistency out of them because, yeah, they played Georgia really close and obviously beat Ole Miss here. They did get smoked by South Carolina, and that's kind of the weird sort of wart that's on their resume so far is, Kentucky really hadn't looked all that bad except for one game where they glaringly just got beat off the ball repeatedly. So was it just like a weird game? Was that their one, right? We talk about you get one where you get to look really bad. Is that just where Kentucky gets to look really bad for their one? Maybe, but I'm really not 100% sure what to think of Kentucky at this point. Obviously, incredible win. You'd much rather deal with that with a win than another close loss and trying to judge you based on, well, you almost beat Ole Miss, so pretty good effort, Kentucky. Good job. You're not doing that. You're getting to talk about this as a win. And so, I think this is a team that's going to have to probably hang its hat on defense for the rest of the year. They probably don't have the explosive level of offense to compete if they try to make this thing a track meet, right? They probably can't do that. But if they're going to play time of possession and going to try to hold the football, that's a really good recipe for beating teams that are better than you, right? Or teams that are more talented than you at the very least. Holding onto the ball, especially when you're going onto the road, taking the crowd out of it, getting to kind of just sit on it, take the atmosphere out of the stadium and just kind of hang out a little bit and play your little ball control offense. That's a great way to win games on the road. And it's a great way to beat teams that are better than you. So got to go hats off to Kentucky, obviously. Ole Miss, man, what do you even say at this point? That was so disappointing. This is you crushed the portal again. We're finally praising you for what you're doing on the lines of scrimmage. We're finally praising you for what you're doing both sides of the football. You're not just going and getting elite playmakers on offense. You're also finding good defenders and to come out at the beginning of your season and the first team that you play with a pulse, you lose. You put up 17 in your own house. That's embarrassing. I don't know what you even say about Ole Miss at this point. That's again, it's just embarrassing. You don't say anything about that. You just hang your head and you walk away and you say, we got to find a way to be a lot better because going into this game, they were the number one ranked offense and defense in the country in terms of scoring. And put up 17. That's not going to be good enough. That's just not going to be good enough against any team in the Southeastern Conference. And so they have to find a way to get better in a hurry so that we don't just sit here and say that they're a fluky team or they're, they can beat up the air, but they can't beat a team that's actually got a pulse. And they're going to have to figure that out quick because this isn't the only good team. I say only good team. If Kentucky can beat them, let's put it this way. If Kentucky can beat them, there's a lot more questions on that schedule than I thought there were for Ole Miss, and their aspirations for this season are definitely in question.
Yeah, and Garrett, it came down to two things for me. They couldn't stay on the field. They were 1 of 10 on third downs, and they couldn't run the ball. They were held to 92 yards rushing. That's their lowest output in a home game since the Mississippi State game in 2022. Earlier this year, the rest of this year, they hadn't been held under 200 yards rushing when they were playing their Charmin soft non-conference schedule.
Right.
So they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't stay on the field. And Kentucky ran the ball not well either. They only ran for 93 yards on 47 carries, but they committed to the run. They ran the clock. And Brock Vandagriff stepped up and made some plays when he had to, especially on those late drives there. So really bummer loss for Ole Miss. Obviously, they have some opportunities later in the year. We mentioned the game that they'll host Georgia in. They'll have some opportunities for some resume-building wins. But, yeah, they have South Carolina next on the road. They're on the road at LSU after that in back-to-back weeks, and they host Oklahoma So got to get some things right really quickly against some
Yep.
formidable opponents to get back on track in the playoff race.
Because you can definitely argue that all three of those teams are better than Kentucky and can find ways to beat you, I think, with more different ways than Kentucky can. And so, like, while Kentucky did play a perfect game for what they needed to, if you're talking about ball control and running the football, South Carolina could definitely do that. If you want to talk about a point-scoring competition, LSU can go head up with you scoring points.
Yeah.
And Oklahoma just had a fairly impressive win going on the road today. And I know maybe that Auburn team isn't as good as a lot of other people think, but that still is an impressive win going on the road, winning on the Plains. That's still an impressive win for Oklahoma. So, look, they got to get some stuff figured out quick because I don't see a whole lot more wins on their schedule if they play like they did today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough schedule down the stretch. It's a tough schedule.
And they're talented enough to win. They are.
Yeah,
they are
absolutely.
talented enough to win, and they should be better. This is why we do this, is we're saying, hey, what the heck was that? You should have smoked Kentucky. We were even joking in the preview, right? We were saying that
didn't think it would be a close game. I
we
did not
always
think this
sit
would be a
there
close
and
game.
say that, oh, isn't Kentucky going to be the first test? And we're like, yeah, but aren't we always saying that Kentucky is the test, and then they always get handled? That's what we said on the preview. We kind of just joked past it because that's what it probably should have been for Ole Miss. It should have been just a joke past a moment, and it wasn't. They got beat. They got soundly beat. It wasn't, a massive point total difference, but they got beat off the ball. They weren't the team that they were supposed to be, and Kentucky played their style of football and won. If you're going to let other teams play their style of football this year, we'll see you in the Independence Bowl or something, Ole Miss. We're not going to have a very good season if that's the case.
Well, from a home team that could not run the ball to a home team that ran the ball all over the yard today, let's talk about Kansas State just running over Oklahoma State 42-20 at home in Manhattan. Oklahoma State had a 13-7 lead, and it was looking really dicey for Kansas State. Avery Johnson threw a bad pick. He was trying to hit a check down in the flat, and he just sailed a ball that ended up right in the defender's lap. But from that time on, after Oklahoma State took a 13-7 lead, Kansas State scored 35 unanswered. Oklahoma State moved the ball pretty well, but just kept shooting themselves in the foot. A lot of that was Alan Bowman making some questionable decisions and just kind of chucking it down the field. I even asked you guys if he was hurt at one point because it looked like there's just no zip on his deep ball whatsoever. So a lot of mistakes for Oklahoma State, but Kansas State, man, running for 300 yards and 8.8 a carry is going to win you a lot of football games. DJ Giddens had a nice day, over 180 yards on the ground on 15 carries with a touchdown. And don't look now, but we might have seen the Avery Johnson breakout game that we were hoping for. It was a really nice day for him. 19 of 31, 259 and 3 through the air, and he added 5 carries for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Cool 93.3 QBR if you are keeping track at home. So, I mean, Kansas State, I think they might have proved today that last week was an anomaly. BYU keeps looking better and better each week. That's going to be a tough place for everybody to play in the Big 12. I think they're moving away from that loss, and they certainly set themselves up to make a run back to the Big 12 title this year by taking care of business today.
Yeah, I mean, that clearly I think we can say is just a weird sort of BYU at altitude anomaly at this point, even though I will say BYU has put up a really solid showing in this early going. They have a much better defense, I think, than a lot of people give them credit for. But yeah, that seems like we can kind of write that off as a weird night where things just didn't go their way and maybe the college football gods had other plans for us. But this much better performance, obviously, from Avery Johnson. Not necessarily like world-beating, massive explosion type performance, but 259 is nothing to sneeze at. A couple of touchdowns through the air, through 3. And obviously when you get DJ Giddens going at 187, that's, pretty fantastic anyway. So you can be good at that. I wonder, though, if this isn't more to do with Oklahoma State's terrible defense. They really are bad on defense. And I mean, we saw even today, well, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but an Arkansas team put up 600 plus yards of offense on them that today against A&M looked like they didn't have a quarterback who knew what he was doing or knew how to play college football. So I don't know that this Oklahoma State defense is very good. And I love the question in the chat from Teddy. I'm going to throw that out there. What's happening in Stillwater? They looked legit early, but I feel like they're declining. That's a good question. I don't know what's happening in Stillwater because none of this really makes sense. We're still looking for the reappearance of Ollie Gordon. They had 76 today, so a lot more of a normal day, I guess, for a regular running back. Definitely not something that I would consider his level. Maybe he's just starting to get going.
Well, he started really well. He had 69 yards on his first 6 carries, I think, or so, maybe
really
10
solid.
carries. He started
But again,
really
you get
well.
in a bad game script situation, you're not going to carry the ball that much. So that's part of it, right? And also, like, I'm not trying to be that guy when it comes to Oklahoma State. I'm not trying to dig on them. I got the little Oklahoma State helmet up here, right? I'm not upset, not a hater, but you're better than this. You're supposed to be coached better than this. You're supposed to be a lot better than this. We were all expecting a lot of Oklahoma State coming into the season, and there's just no excuse to be playing at this level. This is a really, really bad defense. Alan Bowman's got all the experience in the world. He barely completes 50% of his passes, throws up massive yardage numbers, but who cares when you're throwing a touchdown and 2 picks? Like, you can move the ball up and down the field all you want to. If you're not scoring, who cares, right? And so I just don't even know what to say at this point about Oklahoma State. They have completely fallen apart. Maybe they'll start playing better now that September is over, but I don't know what to say to try to fix Oklahoma State at this point. This is just right now not a very good football team who maybe at this point looking 0-2 at the conference, they might be out of the conference discussion.
Well, they are, I think, because there's just too many teams that are going to compete, and the tiebreakers are going to be difficult. And they got to hope that less than 2 teams lose less than 2 games. And I think that's a tough math. They flashed a graphic up on the screen, and I think that with a loss in this game, it would take the playoff chances for Oklahoma State down to 3% already at the end of September. So it's a tough road ahead. I want to push back a little bit. I think we might have overrated Oklahoma State in our minds. I know they had some fun wins last year, beating Oklahoma at home, getting to the Big 12 championship game. They won a lot of close games last year. They won a lot of coin flip games. This is also a team that got blown out by South Alabama in a 6-6 UCF last year. So I think there might have been some fool's gold with a lot of those wins that they reared off last year. A lot of unsustainable practices, building the entire offense out of Ollie Gordon practically.
It's hard to do.
I don't care how good you are. If your entire offense is built out of you and there's not a lot of support coming from other aspects of it, it's going to be really difficult.
And especially a running back. It's hard enough when you're trying to build your whole offense around a quarterback who maybe he's a dual threat and you just got to hope that he can do his thing. It's even harder when you're a running back. You're a singular threat there. You're not throwing the football if you're a running back. And so you're saying, like, hey, go find the yards on the ground. Just go do it. Not in today's day and age. Maybe there's some running backs who can handle that. Maybe there's some teams that could handle making their running back the star of the show consistently. But I don't know. I know that there's one up in Boise. There's one that can do that for sure.
I'll throw that up there. Mitch is not with us tonight, but he is. He got to take in the SMU Florida State game. But yes, Ashton Genty. You can.
That's the guy you can build an offense around, but it's not like Boise State.
You can build the offense
otherwise.
You can build the offense around them, but what the problem is in Oklahoma State right now is one, Gordon's just not playing up to expectations, whether it's an injury or whatever. He doesn't really have a lot of offensive line help to open up holes for him either.
Which is very true.
I mean, do you trust Alan Bowman to win a game with his arm right now? Because if I'm an opposing defense, I'm just forcing Alan Bowman to try to beat me with his arm. Because I think he's going to beat himself.
I trust he's going to move the ball up and down the field, and then probably when it doesn't matter. Right?
Yeah, and he'll get today that was getting to about the 30-yard line and then just forgetting how to be a quarterback.
Yeah, which just isn't going to get it done. When you're settling for 3 over and over again, when you're not able to, convert at the very end of the game or at the very end of a drive, that's where you lose football games. And if this is going to be what they are, then Oklahoma State's not going to win very much this season. And again, like, this is a team that we had high expectations for, but this is also a team that, look, you've had your same coach for a long time. Gundy's been there for like ever. I can't remember who was even there before Mike Gundy. That's how
Plus
long
Miles.
he's been there. Yeah, at this point, that's so bizarre that Mike Gundy was there when he shouted, "I'm a man, I'm 40." I was a kid. Like it's been so long since he's done that, and there's no excuse at this point in your program to do that unless you just have different goals as a program. So if their goal is just to be kind of an average, sometimes good, once every 5 years they'll compete for the Big 12, then okay, you're getting everything that you want. But if they want to be a serious program that competes year in and year out and doesn't just look good in stretches and puts up some points and whatever else, you're going to have to make some. I'm not saying you should fire Gundy. I'm just saying you got to take a look at your program and say, what are we doing wrong? How do we take this more seriously? Is it an NIL thing? I don't know. I know Gundy hasn't necessarily approached that the best, hasn't had the most success in NIL and the transfer portal. I don't know what the problem is, but again, Oklahoma State has issues and I don't think is competitive this year. Kansas State at least gets to walk out of this game saying that they are, right? That they can still be competitive. We didn't, and I said this, I wasn't going to trust Kansas State until we could see that Avery Johnson can pass. Well, today he showed me enough. He showed me enough today that he can pass enough to keep Kansas State relevant in enough situations. He can keep Kansas State scoring if he needs to. Maybe it's just a bad defense, but he at least showed me that he can. Let's see what happens when he takes on a better defense at some point.
Jim Knowles, Mitch is absolutely right. Jim Knowles taking his talents to Ohio State really set that defense back. They haven't been the same since Knowles left for Columbus. Kansas State has a wide open runway to the Big 12 title game. They don't play another team currently ranked in the top 25 until Farmageddon, the last week of the season. That might change. I have a feeling Colorado's going to sneak into the top 25 this week, and that's Kansas State's next game after a bye. But a lot of opportunities to get some good wins and get it into Arlington for a showdown with maybe Utah. Utah's struggling right now against Arizona.
Yeah. But again, Utah with Cam Rising versus Utah without Cam Rising are two very different teams.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I mean, calendar's about to turn to October. That means it's time for the Big 12 to just get absolutely
maybe they get a rematch with that other team from Utah.
Maybe they do. I haven't lost a game yet.
Let's see.
All right, let's go to Happy Valley. An ugly game tonight. Penn State 21, Illinois 7. A lot closer than some predicted. The line on this one, I believe, was 19.5 at kick. So a wide open line that didn't necessarily materialize. Penn State had opportunities to cover that line, and obviously Penn State's defense really stole the show today. Illinois scored on their opening possession, drove the ball 75 yards down the field. After that, Penn State just surrendered 144 total yards for the rest of the game combined. But Illinois, I was really impressed with their defense. I thought that Drew Aller in that running game would give us, yes, Mitch, you did take the candy. Congratulations. Good for you. Get on the show and talk if you want to.
We appreciate the comments. It helps the algorithm. Keep doing that.
Yeah, keep the comments coming. Just kidding. Great defensive effort from Illinois. Penn State got down in the red zone a few times. I know they missed a couple field goals. I'll confess that I was more locked in on UGA Bama at this time, but I was flipping back and forth to this one. I'm excited to go back and watch it, but big defensive effort, big defensive slugfest. I just want to credit Aaron Henry, honestly, the Illinois defensive coordinator. I highlighted that he gave up over 500 yards to Andy Kotelnicki when Kotelnicki was at Kansas last year, and big improvement. His defense stepped up and only allowed 21 points tonight. So I think Illinois is here to stay. I think Penn State, it's a clunker, but you win and move on, and you got the team's best shot at home, and you got bigger games on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me with this was Penn State showed us they could win a different way, right? Penn State had kind of been floating the offense and saying we're going to just score a bunch of points, and that almost got them in trouble with Bowling Green. But obviously found a way to win.
Also lost to Old Dominion today, so Penn State and Texas A&M fans are just grinding their team. Falcons.
What? Just very confused today. This is why transitive property, you can't really do that in college football because it's just inconsistent. You're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds. It's just a different type of thing. But no, Penn State showed they can win with defense, and I think that's really cool because when you're going to be a team that competes, you need to show that you can be a good team, even when other facets of the game don't work. If your offense isn't that good, like we talked about Drew Aller being kind of a big play guy. I highlighted that he was number 1 in the country in yards per completion. He threw for 135 tonight. Very average, very maybe slightly below average night for him. Just kind of contained, and he didn't pass the ball all that much. Only threw 21 passes, but it's just what the game script gave you. You ran the ball a whole bunch, 44 carries tonight, and so you very much were a on the ground type of offense. But defense dictated this game for Penn State. They really just held Illinois down, didn't really let them do very much. Luke Altmaier played fine, but again, 16 for 25, 185, a touchdown and a pick. Nothing necessarily to write home about. Leading rusher goes for 64. Nothing massive jumps off the box score. Penn State did a really good job just kind of shutting it down, playing good defense, and doing what they had to do to get the win. And that's going to be how you have to do it. Sometimes you don't bring your best game. Sometimes you're not going to bring your offense the way that you thought you would. Sometimes the other team's going to give you a really good look. And you have to give credit to that Illinois defense too. That's a pretty good Illinois defense over there that ended up going up against them. But end of the day, Penn State finds a way to win, and that's what you got to do if you're going to compete. I'm excited for this Penn State team. I want to see them kind of keep going through that Big Ten schedule. I'm curious to see just how high they can fly this year, given the fact that they've kind of come up short in the past. But 12-team playoff, maybe they can sneak in there with a good 10-2, 11-1 type showing from them.
Yeah, they got a big one in a couple weeks at USC. Excited to see those two teams match up in a couple weeks. Let's go to South Bend, where Notre Dame won an ugly, sloppy game over Louisville, 31-24. 17 of Notre Dame's points came off of a short field. The teams combined for 5 turnovers. It was a really ugly game. I know a lot of Notre Dame fans were hoping to see Riley Leonard push it down the field a little bit more, offense open up. I guess you got that from a point standpoint a little bit, but really this was more about turnovers, sloppy play, and Louisville kind of shooting themselves in the foot. But get the win, move on, keep your playoff chances alive for Notre Dame.
Yeah, basically. I mean, they needed to do that. They needed to get a win. It's just survive in advance at this point. Definitely disappointed with the way that Louisville looked in this game. Definitely probably should have played better. But end of the day, you got what you needed. You move on. Riley Leonard still not really showing that he's going to be a threat with the arm. That's probably not something that you can depend on this year, if we're being honest. And I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know if it's personnel. I don't know if it's just Riley Leonard doesn't play very well when he plays for Notre Dame. I don't know what that is. But that's just where we are right now. And so, yeah, survive in advance, maybe see if you can fix it in practice, maybe start pushing the ball down the field a little bit more, take some shots, do something, right? I feel like that's kind of where Notre Dame fans probably are. And I don't know this for sure, but if I had to guess, pulse of the fan base is that meme with the guy with the stick just poking it, and they're like poking the offense, like do something. And I feel like that's kind of where they are right now, is they want to see a little bit more fireworks out of Riley Leonard in this team, and they probably deservedly so. They have a lot of talent. I love Greathouse at receiver. Obviously, Jeremiah loved the running back. You should be able to have a lot more success on offense than they have had. You score 31 against Louisville, you'll be okay with that. Let's just keep moving on.
I want to kind of highlight just how sloppy Louisville was early in this game. So it's tied 7-7. Louisville fumbles the ensuing kickoff. They recover it, but they have to start at their own 7-yard line. Tyler Shuck on the first play after that took off for 46 yards down the field and then fumbled. So Notre Dame gets the ball back, score a touchdown. Louisville gets the ball back then and goes for it on 4th down around midfield. They botched the snap, and it ended up all the way back at the 4-yard line, I believe, where Notre Dame took over. So just a really, really rough sequence of events early on in that game that just kind of put Louisville behind the 8 ball. They fell down 21-7 as a result of that. It was just really hard for them to climb back into it. They turned the ball over a couple more times. Rallied late, but it was just too little too late. Notre Dame survive in advance. Didn't look good on offense again, but hey, they got the job done and contained Louisville relatively well. They held Louisville to 131 yards rushing. we highlighted how explosive they've
Yep.
been running the football. So kudos to them for that. Garrett, that's the last big, deeper dive matchup in the top 25. Elsewhere in the top 25, I'll kind of let you just kind of go dealer's choice here for a little bit. We had Texas looking a little sluggish against Mississippi State. They ended up winning that game 35-13, but not the sharpest start and just kind of lulled the Bulldogs to sleep a little bit in their big SEC opener in Austin. Michigan hung on to beat Minnesota 27-24. USC outscored Wisconsin 28-0 in the second half to pull away. 38-21 was the final in that one. Oklahoma got a late pick six to sink Auburn 27-21. BYU is 5-0 after staving off a late Baylor rally. They won that game 34-28 in Waco. And Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, and Iowa State all took care of business, Garrett. I'll let you just kind of take that where you will. Take us around the top 25. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, man. For me, man, I want to start with Texas and just kind of discuss this. They didn't look that good tonight, and that's okay. It's okay if Texas didn't look that good in their first SEC game if they learned their lesson. If the lesson is, hey, we didn't bring it and that almost cost us, then I'm okay with that being the situation for Texas. They can move on. But if the situation is that they are going to overlook this because they stat padded in the fourth quarter, I think this game was like 14-6.
It was 14-6
late in the third quarter.
Yeah, 14-6. I think they scored as the third quarter expired to go up 21-6.
Yeah, and so it was a game where I was watching this pretty late, like, oh, Texas is maybe in trouble with Mississippi State. What happened to their offense? I honestly was looking to see, like, did Arch get hurt? Who's running this offense right now? I thought Arch was pretty solid. What happened? Why aren't they scoring points? And then obviously had a couple of big plays and some pretty massive defensive busts for Mississippi State at the end of that game. There's that big run at the very end, and then I think they hit another one that moved the ball down the field pretty late in that game too. So, again, not the best showing from Texas. Hopefully they're using this as an opportunity to learn that they have to show up and play these games, even if it's just Mississippi State. But yeah, I mean, we've seen Texas teams wilt in these situations before, and they didn't do it today. And so you got to give them some credit for actually getting it done and being resilient. This is still a very good Texas football team. Michigan, you said hanging on. Again, this is a Michigan team I don't really trust right now. I want.
This is how all their games are going to go, isn't it? Like, I feel like most Michigan games are going to be around this score and really, really close.
And full disclosure, didn't get to watch this one. I was away for a lot of the day, so I caught some highlights and watched a couple of games on my phone that I could. Michigan did not make the screen very frequently today.
They were up big, so they were up 21-0 at halftime, I believe, and expanded that to 24-3, and then they just kind of let Minnesota get back in it late.
Well, and Trey, I checked the box score, and I see that Alex Orji throws for 86 yards, and my first reaction was okay, and that's so sad.
He broke out today.
I shouldn't be sitting there saying okay for 86. Like, that shouldn't be a number that I'm really impressed with through the air. So. Again, like, this is not going to be a throwing team. This is not going to be a team that probably, passes for really, really good numbers.
Offensively.
But yeah, probably not much to watch there. I do like, and I'm going to go with Teddy here, our resident Michigan expert here. Michigan's game will be ugly wins, but it will look better as the season goes on. I think that's probably right. I think they do improve through the season. I don't think they were ready going into the season. I don't think they knew who their starter needed to be or what their offense needed to look like. And so now that we're sitting here, week 5 going into week 6, it's time for Michigan to say, okay, well, now we know Alex Orji is probably our best chance to win. He can actually move the football. We're going to play some not so good teams down the stretch. There are going to be some good ones, but some not so good teams in the Big Ten left on that schedule. Let's try to build some momentum, maybe see if we can't get him going a little bit more. He may not be an elite level passer, but if this offense can work as a ground and pound game, then great. We can make that work. Just not a Michigan team I'm super impressed with right now. Definitely need to make some strides and go the right direction, right? We need to see some steps from Michigan before I can say that, like, yeah, this team is one that'll push for a playoff spot, or, yeah, this team will push for actual, competing for the whole thing. I don't know that they're there. I'm not going to doubt them because as long as they still have that defense, that's a really good team. But again, that offense will ultimately probably hold them down towards the end of the season, depending on what they can get from the air game. You have to throw the ball. It's modern college football. You have to throw the ball. And then the only other one that I really wanted to highlight and address too much, besides little note, good job Oklahoma, you win in Auburn. BYU, man, 5-0 for those BYU Cougars. Very, very impressed with what they're doing up there in Provo and what they're able to accomplish there. That's a really good defense. That's a really underrated good defense. They kind of have their style. They know what they want to do with the football. They know what they want to do when they're on offense. They kind of take some big plays. They can run the ball effectively, but that's a really good defense for BYU that has held. I'm not necessarily super impressed with Baylor as an offense, but I'm really impressed with what they were able to do against good quarterbacks at SMU and Kansas State. And so I want to give them some credit. I know we had some really good turnout from some of the BYU fans in the videos this week. I wanted to shout some of them out and say, yeah, we heard you. We saw you. This is a good defense. They showed it again today. They held on. They almost blew it against Baylor. They did have to hold on in that game, but this is a good BYU team. Again, you learn lessons in close wins just as much as you can in a loss. So learn your lessons, move forward. Anyone who had BYU at 5-0 on their bingo card, let me know, because I definitely didn't.
Because you're a liar if you had BYU at 5-0 on your bingo card. That OU Auburn game, I want to jump back to that one real quick. Did you get to watch any of that? Because it was pretty nuts.
I watched a bunch of it back and forth. Yeah. I was kind of flipping between screens.
Auburn was up 21-10 about midway through the fourth quarter, and then just collapsed. Gave up a touchdown, threw a pick six. Peyton Thorne threw a pick six, and they gave up a late field goal to kind of sealed it, make it a 6-point game. So, man, I don't know if anyone's checked on Hugh Freeze tonight. He might need some support from his friends and family after losing another game like that. So, Auburn, tough schedule. It's going to be really tough, but good job for Oklahoma getting their first SEC win on the road.
One little note that I'm seeing on the screen, tonight was the largest attendance number at Albertson Stadium for Boise State.
Awesome. Good for them.
Just a little random little tidbit I saw on the screen right next to me. Like, hey, how about that? Showed up for this Washington State game. Go them.
That game is 24-10 with about a minute left in the third quarter. I think Arizona just made a field goal to go up 13-3 over Utah. So that kind of feels insurmountable the way that Utah is playing offense right now. We'll see if they can turn it around.
Arizona was the dog in that game, if I remember correctly.
Arizona was a 8-point dog at kick. I think you got them at like 11.
That was my number there. So I was I took them, and that feels really good now. I feel like I'm going to hit that bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's jump back to Friday night real quick, because there were a couple of wild games that we need to react to just really quickly before we kind of do some rapid fire to end this thing. Miami over Virginia Tech, 38-34. It was Fail Mary Part 2. If you remember that, back with the replacement rest circa 2012 or so.
That was something.
Man, what a game. I know you took Miami. We'll pat you on the back for the Arizona pick, it looks like right now, but we will also point out that you took Miami in the points. They couldn't stop Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech was moving the ball at will down the field at points. Credit Cam Ward for putting the team on his back to bring them back. He had that crazy slip out to the tight end when it looked like he was going to be wrapped up for a sack late, and the tight end took it all the way down to the 1-yard line to set up the go-ahead touchdown. And then they literally held on for dear life and got a really, I don't want to say it was a gift, because I'd love to get your thought on this, but I think they made the right call on the Hail Mary. I think it was an incomplete pass, but the fact that it was called a pass, called a catch on the field and then overturned, I don't see how there was indisputable evidence to overturn a call of catch on the field. There was the ACC statement this morning that came out and said that it was because a Miami player touched it while they were touching out of bounds. That makes it an incomplete pass. Makes sense to me, but seems I'd be really pissed if I was a Virginia Tech fan about how that transpired.
This is just another example of I don't understand what it means to survive the ground. I thought I did, and then I see this play, and now I don't. This is, you think you come down in bounds, and you get to the ground, and then once you're on a pile of people, the ball kind of pops out and is, bobbling and all that. I just don't get it. This is not something that I'm going to pretend that I understand. So yeah, like I get the letter of the law. I understand what they said. And strictly speaking, like if I'm just going off my gut, I don't think that's a catch. But looking at it in the slow-mo, looking at, kind of what they would consider the rules on what a catch is and what it means to survive the ground and how you count a body part touches inbounds. So is that, part of when he gets inbounds, and then coming down, does he have to hold it for this long or that long? I just don't understand at this point. Yeah, I don't understand how you call that a touchdown and then go back and overturn it. I think they made the right call. Like, I think the right team won. And also, like, again, take all of this aside. Virginia Tech had terrible clock management. That could have just been an incomplete pass. And then they could be, taking another shot or making another play later after that. The clock management probably wasted about 30 seconds on that drive. So
yeah,
the first place
that gets lost in all that.
Yeah, the first place Virginia Tech fans need to look is not at that call. You can't leave it in the hands of the refs. You have to look at yourself and say that the clock management that burned probably 30 seconds off that clock was atrocious. You could have had a chance to, set up better plays or run like 3, 4, 5 more plays that result in, more yardage or a better attempt at this than what you had. So there's that. You could also wrap up better and actually, hit Cam Ward and stop him from, escaping the pocket. And they did that for a lot of the game. I was not that impressed with Miami overall. I finally gave them credit last week. I said that Miami was really impressive. They're one of my teams that I was watching now to kind of see like, oh, now that they're going to get into their conference schedule, could they make a run at the whole thing? You can take that off if they can't play good defense, and I don't care. I'm not even going to entertain it. They won't win consistently if they can't play good defense. I'm not even going to listen to the Miami hype at this point. I can't do it. This is not a team that was ready to play that game. Maybe this is their one. I'll allow for it, whatever.
Well, you can call it their one if they don't have a history of dropping games like this, right?
Like, this is
especially
not
under
they do.
Yeah.
They just do this with Cristobal. They're not supposed to do this if you're supposed to be a championship level team, but Cristobal hasn't been able to find a way so far at Miami to show us that he's going to not just crap the bed a couple times a year. And so, I think this is their one, but I'm also willing to say that this might be their first as opposed to just their one. So I don't know. We can wait. We can still watch it. I still think Cam Ward's a really good quarterback, and he's going to be able to keep them in games. But if that defense can't figure it out, like I'm going to be out on Miami for competition this year.
They play at Cal next week. Game day will be in town for that one. I was trying to see what time that game kicked because I'm hoping. Oh, yeah, baby. It's a 9:30 p.m. Central kick. That game. That's going to be a 10:30 p.m. body clock game.
We have to watch a game that matters at 9:30 at night.
There's games that matter on right now. We got the number 10 team in the country down 10, and their quarterback just threw an awful pick.
I guess
Arizona for more.
But we all know that Utah's not the number 10 team in the like they are, but they're not.
With Cam Rising, they're probably
with Cam Rising they are, but again, like maybe Cam Rising was just the friends we made along the way. I don't know that Cam Rising's a real person at this point.
He's a myth at this point, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Other Friday game, we had Rutgers hold on to beat Washington 21-18. They improved to 4-0. The ranked Rutgers bandwagon is moving along, and we'll see if they get into the poll.
I do want to say one thing about this.
Yeah.
That Rutgers game was awesome. The environment was fantastic. Those students showed out, and that game was amazing. I was saying it a little bit in the group text last night. Watching the end of that game, watching the missed field goal, all the students go nuts, and then they play I Got a Feeling, and all the students are kind of jamming out, having fun. I was getting serious, like, nostalgia flashbacks to high school and, like, having those, like, fun games that are dramatic, and then you're dancing to kind of that old, like, late 2000s club music type of thing. And man, like, I was just enjoying the whole thing. That had vibes at an immaculate level. So love what Rutgers was doing. Thought that was super, super fun. And, yeah, I'm in, man. Love it. Love it.
All right, well, let's talk Texas A&M. We've put this off long enough. Felt like I was getting a root canal at times watching this game. Texas A&M did win 21-17 over Arkansas.
Because that's how these games go.
It felt like I was getting a root canal at points in this game. It started off crazy fast. We had a 75-yard touchdown for Arkansas, a 58-yard touchdown for A&M. And then there wasn't a lot of scoring after that. Certainly not a lot of big plays. It was 14-14 until the fourth quarter. Arkansas got a field goal. A&M got their third touchdown with about 9 minutes to go. And a lot of defense was played. And a lot of questions are still out there about Texas A&M's offense out of this. I know they've been playing with a backup quarterback, Marcel Reed. He's had some good moments. There's definitely been flashes, but I think at this point you have enough tape on him to say that he's just not there as a passer to be the guy that can lead A&M to be a contender in SEC play. And I think they're really going to hope that Connor Wigman can get over his shoulder injury and make it back into the starting lineup soon.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I had this one pegged exactly perfect in the preview. I told you that this was not going to be an effective game passing outside of the one big play. And I did mention there were going to be big plays in this game. There were going to be probably one or two big shots that Arkansas was going to hit over the top. And they did. They hit a couple of shots over the top. But outside of this, they were going to struggle to move the ball consistently because when Arkansas played teams with the pulse, they didn't pass the football very well. That's what we saw. Taylor Green, not a very good day for him.
And Arkansas wanted him to throw the ball 41 times.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I
don't get it. I just don't get it. While you have a back in Quentin Jackson who's super talented.
Yeah, Quentin Jackson got 10 carries today.
Yeah, he had flashes of brilliance in that offense too. Like he had a couple of carries where I was like, oh, here we go. Now it's going to happen. Here comes the moment that he finally gets his opportunity. And they just didn't commit to running the football, kept trying to go with their game changer, and he definitely changed the game, not the way that they wanted him to. But I also said, and one of the main points that I made was Texas A&M is going to have to win the game from the pocket if they're going to have success in this game. They were going to have Marcel sit in the pocket and deliver accurate balls down the field in order to win this game in any sort of comfortable margin. He didn't do that. And so my solution for that was saying, if you can't do that, it's going to be another one of these ugly, stupid Arkansas games that happens for A&M where you find a way to win at the end, but it's going to probably make its way towards overtime and be, high level stakes towards the end of the game. And that's what we got. It came down to a strip sack fumble that ended up icing the game for A&M. So, this is not an awesome thing if you're A&M. I don't think you love what's happening with your offense right now. I do think that the question of, Marcel Reed versus Connor Wigman has to be brought up whenever Connor's healthy again. I think you have to give him opportunities to play in that offense and show that he can pass the ball more effectively from the pocket. There's going to be a lot of controversy over that. And obviously, you can go over to texags.com if you want to see some of the worst takes possible for, just sort of board. Just to be clear, not from the staff. Staff does a good job, not, dissing on Billy Lucci or any of the guys over there. But if you want to see terrible takes on quarterback play, go look through the forums over on
They need to turn that thing off on game days, man. They need
it's atrocious. It is just atrocious. And because here's the ultimate situation. I'm going to go into a little bit of a deeper for the moment for this situation. You saw Marcel Reed play really well against Florida, but it's been established, I think, at this point that Florida is booty butt on defense.
And they didn't have tape on him. They got to kind of catch him by surprise.
Even then, he kind of had one big play over the top that he hit.
Yeah.
That was
a lot of running the ball, the offensive line.
And teams have tape on it, so they're getting upfield, they're pressuring him, and he's struggling to pass from the pocket. I think he can develop, and I do think you saw things today that looked better from him. I think he did better overall. But again, you're seeing marginal improvements that aren't really showing up in the stat sheet. So it's something where, for me, if I was looking at this, I think you have to give Connor Wigman another shot once he gets healthy. And you got to say, hey, we need our quarterback that won the job in fall camp. We need him back. You need him back on the field playing and throwing the ball downfield, because there were some real shots today that were missed. This will be another point of contention, but the receivers were running wide open at times. You have to be able to hit guys, and that's not on Marcel. Marcel's a freshman. Marcel is a freshman. He is going to get better. He will learn how to read defense, find those guys, pick that apart at some point in time in his career. He's not there yet. And maybe he can get there just through trial and error on the field. But if you're the Aggies, you're currently 4-1 and you're feeling pretty good about your season. Do you want to throw all that away waiting for a quarterback to develop? Do you want to go drop a couple games to maybe Mizzou and LSU in October because you're hoping Marcel can develop and you like the way he gives you something extra with the legs? Because if he wants to improve massively overnight and throw for 300 yards next week against Missouri, I'm not going to complain about it. But I just don't see that on the table right now for where his progression is and where his skill set is. And I think you got to hope, if you're the Aggies, that Connor Wigman's ready to go soon.
Yeah, he upped his completion percentage to 50%,
Mm-hmm.
and that was completing a lot of passes down the stretch because I think he was 5 of 15, 6 of 16 at one point. So,
yep.
Yeah, a lot of work to do. He's a young kid. I think he has a really bright future wherever he is at, and hopefully in College Station as an Aggie fan. But yeah, 2-0 in the SEC play. That's my main takeaway. And move on to
There
Missouri
goes
next week.
Jonty, man. There he goes.
Man,
that is awesome. Love that.
Big touchdown run.
Oh, maybe fumbled at the goal line.
Well,
might have jinxed him. Oops. Anyways, no, huge run. That's fun. Yeah, anyways, that's the total side note.
Let's go rapid fire here. 2-minute offense to close things out. We'll start in Central Florida as Colorado got a huge win today, 48-21 over UCF. I'll confess, I thought this was going to be closer than the 14-point spread. I did not have Colorado winning this game outright, but this is the Colorado experience that we were promised with Coach Prime, right? Like They came out, balled out on offense, did a great job defensively as well, containing the Central Florida offensive attack that had an awesome rushing attack coming into this one. Yeah, a blowout win for Colorado was not on my bingo card.
Yep, me neither. Definitely impressed. They decided to play some defense today. That was pretty surprising. I'm glad they showed up to play some defense. And didn't get to watch a whole bunch of this game, but I'm excited to go back and watch some of the highlights. Not rooting against the team by any means, just hadn't seen it out of them. This is a good step in the right direction. And if you're UCF, that's super disappointing because you came into this thing really running the ball well against a defense who didn't really defend the run very well. And you weren't able to have more success on offense. So that's pretty disappointing.
Yeah, 4 turnovers for the Knights, set up some short fields, I believe, for Colorado's. But big win for the Buffs. They needed that one, and they're 4-1. All of a sudden, they have more wins or match the win total, I believe, that they did last year. So lots
we'll
more.
See if they win anything from here.
Lots more ahead. I think they've got some very winnable games.
They got some wins on the schedule. I think they can make
that game against Kansas State is going to be really fun. In a couple
oh, yeah, that's going to be a fun one.
So elsewhere, we've got TCU, also in the Big 12, got a big win over Kansas. Kansas is done, unfortunately. I hate that. 38-27 over the Jayhawks. North Carolina blew a 20-0 lead today in a rivalry game against Duke. Man, there were rumors that Mike Brown was going to retire earlier this week, and he might need to. After that, 20-0, you give up 21 unanswered, lose 21-20.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. I'm not going to lie. And also going back to the TCU game, I did have this one coming last week, declared Kansas back. Yeah, Kansas is back. This is unfortunate. I enjoyed Kansas. They should be better. It's Jeff Grimes. He's not a good offensive coordinator.
Yeah, the scheme is night and day. When you turn on, I know it wasn't great tonight, but you turn on Andy Kotelnicki offense at Penn State, and it's just night and day. Yeah. Tulane staking their claim to be towards the top of the American, 45-10 over South Florida. But Army and Navy, both 4-0, both blowout wins this week. Big time. They're at the top of the American standings. I'm still rooting for the chaos where we would get Army Navy in back-to-back weeks in December. That's exactly what I'm rooting for, because one of them would get to play at home too. That's the other wrinkle of that. Which would be
super cool. The other thing about that too, going over to the Tulane game as well, kind of stomped all over USF. Yeah, and love that from them. Really cool that, even after losing their head coach last season, they did a great job replacing him, and love what they're able to do there. I'm excited to watch what happens down the stretch with Boise and Tulane both kind of vying for that possible playoff spot. Really excited. James Madison too. Yeah, that's going to be really fun kind of down the stretch, watching these three teams kind of battle to see which one of them can look the best, have the best wins, rack up the best type of resume. I think it's going to provide some really good football if you're watching these teams down the stretch.
Elsewhere in the G5, we had Sam Houston 40-39 over Texas State. I think this game was 22-0 at one point in favor of Texas State. And Sam Houston just chipped away, came back. They're a plucky little team this year. I think they're already 4-1, if my memory serves me right. And yeah, a fun little CUSA team. I think they're slotting in right behind Liberty right now in Conference USA.
Yeah, it'd be fun to watch them. I'm kind of excited. Might have to get out to a game.
I'm like a 45-minute drive from their stadium. I need to make it over to a San.
Got to come down and stay with you one of these nights, and maybe sneak out to a.
We got some Tuesday night games coming up that I think I'll be finding my way over to.
Hey, look, I can call in for a Wednesday.
Yeah, it was a big
work, and I'm gone for a Wednesday. It's not because I went to a Sam Houston game. I promise.
Yeah, try explaining that one. You're true
for legal reasons. That's a joke.
Sorry that I missed work. I'm just a college football sicko. Yeah. So it was a.
I use the sick day because I'm a sicko, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Texas State was also at 39-21 in the third quarter in this one, and then 19 unanswered from Sam Houston to steal that win. They kicked a last-second field goal. And UNLV, man, Matthew Saluka was not missed today, 59-14 over Fresno State. And then we had the big receiver from UNLV, whose name is escaping me right now. Did you see his tweet?
I didn't see his tweet. I saw UNLV Twitter. UNLV
Twitter was on one today, but we also had Ricky White, the big receiver. He basically said in his post-game interview, like, yeah, whoever that was going to donate the $100,000 and cover the bill, might as well just go ahead and give that to the offensive line because they deserve it more.
Yeah, that's, super fun. My favorite tweet from them was, who the F is Sluka? That was my favorite comment. I can't remember if that was like their Barstool page or someone like that, but
I think it was their Barstool page.
Somebody said that. And look, I can't kind of blame them. This might turn out to be one of the biggest fumbles of all time from Sluka messing up the situation, kind of overestimating your importance to the team, apparently, because they did not miss you in a game where we thought this was going to be a fairly competitive game. And
I thought Fresno State was going to keep this one close. Yeah.
I think we both picked them to win or like keep it close or something. And like at the end of the day, nope. So shout out UNLV. Maybe this is still that extra team to go there with Boise and Tulane and James Madison. But interesting story to say the least. And Sluka with an absolute fumble in terms of his situation. Don't think he's going to be getting too much money for his talents anywhere. So sorry about it.
Haj Malik Williams in relief of Sluka, 13 of 16 for 182 and 3 through the air, and then he added 12 carries for 119 yards and a touchdown. Pretty dang good. Garrett, we're going to wrap it there. Another fantastic day of college football. Make sure that you are liked and subscribed in all the right places, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and check us out Monday for 3 Tech Takeout, our leftover thoughts and recapping these night games that are still ongoing right now. Looks like we're going to have a lot to talk about on Monday's show for these late night games. So for Garrett Turney, I'm Trey Reeves, and we will see you guys next time.
Gracious, how about